You are listening to the Toxic Mold Podcast with Steve Worsley, the toxic mold expert and your number one source for mold consulting and mitigation in the USA. Let's dive into a brand new episode.
Before we get started on this episode, here's a not-so-short disclaimer. While all attempts have been made to verify the content provided in this podcast, neither the podcaster nor the producers assume any responsibility for errors, omissions, or alternative interpretations of the issues discussed here. All information stated in this podcast is the opinion of Steve Worsley. Steve Worsley is a mold specialist with over 25 years of experience in the construction and mold industry. The Toxic Mold Podcast is for information sharing purposes only. The views expressed are those of the podcaster and his alone. These views should not be taken as expert instruction or commands. While there may be references to medical conditions and symptoms, all podcast episodes are the opinion of Steve Worsley, and any medical questions or concerns shall be addressed with the appropriate licensed medical professional or professionals. As the podcaster refers to different mold types, please be aware that Steve Worsley is not a microbiologist, and questions concerning mold specifics should be answered by the appropriate professional. Steve isn't, nor does he offer any legal advice. For any legal advice, you must speak to a lawyer. The listener is 100% responsible for his or her own actions. You can check out Steve's books on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and search for author Steve Worsley. You can also take Steve's mold education courses, such as Mold 101 and the Mycotoxin Prevention Kit, by going to cnccontractorservices.com. Again, check out his mold education courses at cnccontractorservices.com. Now, let's get to the episode.
Hello, you're listening to the Toxic Mold Podcast with myself, Steve Worsley. We have my wife, Cassandra. Hopefully we're going to get some guests.
Yes, soon enough.
Yeah, I have one. I think it's a him. I sent him an email. I haven't heard back from him, but it's a family that went through tons of issues. Come to find out it was mold. In one of my Facebook groups, they posted, I think I showed you their story.
Yeah, their mold story.
Pretty crazy. But anyhow, for our listeners, as you all know, I don't like bringing guests on very often just because it's a lot of work. So post-production and everything else. But anyhow, today's subject, last week we talked about the different roofing materials to prevent mold. So today we're going to talk about siding. So when you think about siding, like the common types of siding, what do you think of?
Vinyl is the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, that's very, very common to have vinyl. For our listeners, we can go through however you want to, but, speaking of vinyl, one of the most important things with vinyl is it has to be installed properly. And for vinyl siding, it's lap siding is what it is. If you drive the nails in or screws, however you're attaching it, you should be doing it with nails. You can't seat the nails, meaning they can't be tight.
Mm-hmm.
So when you put vinyl siding on, there's a nailing strip that's about 1.5 inches wide. The reason you don't seat those nails, and I can tell if I drive by a house and they did, is vinyl expands and shrinks when it gets hot.
Yeah.
And so when they seat the nail, there's nowhere for it to go.
Okay.
So it just buckles.
Wow.
So when you drive by a house and you see that, it looks terrible, and it's not. It just means it wasn't installed properly.
So if somebody says, okay, I know siding is what goes on the outside of a house, what types of siding would you say are better for mold prevention than others?
Well, it's like everything else with mold. It's not the easiest question to answer because a lot of it's cost. But for cost effectiveness, I would say vinyl lap siding or James Hardie siding.
And what is James Hardie?
It's like a fiber cement.
Okay.
And I don't want to call it composite because it's not really that. But they came out with that, I'd say in the late 80s. Or not late 80s, late 90s or early 2000s.
Okay.
And it's a very durable siding. It's
Okay.
not, most siding's pretty easy to put on anyways. I mean, depending, I'm not a bricklayer or anything like that, but like brick or stone's probably the most difficult to do. Going back to your question, I would say to our listeners, I would say either vinyl lap siding or Hardie siding.
Okay. So vinyl lap Lap and vinyl, same thing, right? Lap siding is vinyl
Yeah,
siding?
well, the James Hardy, each piece of it's like, I think they're 9 inches
Okay.
wide. On lap siding, it's usually a double lap, and it's probably 11 inches.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So as you're going, you start at the bottom and you work your way up. As you're going, you're putting in, 9 or 11-inch sections of it.
Okay.
Whereas like brick,
Mhm.
it's only like 4 inches, 3.5 inches wide. It's not very wide.
Now, brick is not a cellulose material, right?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Just to be clear. So brick is probably very expensive, but probably also the best because it's not a cellulose.
If it's installed properly, yes.
Okay.
There's a lot of factors you have to consider. Like we talked about vinyl and you can't seat the fastener.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing brick, you need to make sure you start with a brick ledger. You need to make sure, depending on the type of brick, most brick has to breathe.
Okay.
And so you put weep holes in them for the moisture to run out. It's usually right at the very bottom. But if it's installed properly, absolutely. Brick, and the home I grew up in was built, I think, in the 50s, 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole front was all brick.
Okay.
And back then, it wasn't cheap, but that was the preferred method.
Correct, because you see a lot of brick houses in the South. I was just saying predominantly.
Yeah, like in Texas.
Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee. A lot of homes are not vinyl siding. They're brick.
Yeah, and I would imagine in the South, it's probably better to have something like that. The vinyl, I don't want to say it this way because if our listeners have vinyl, I don't want it to come across like I'm saying it's cheap, but it is a very inexpensive type. The least expensive actually is going to be like T99. I think now it's like T111 or T100.
Mm-hmm.
It's those 4x8 sheets that just look like it's wood siding, and it's a composite material. Sometimes, like when I did home inspections, a lot of times we'd see masonite, and it's just it's full of cellulose materials.
Okay.
And if you don't keep it sealed, then it starts to crumble away and just looks terrible.
What about, I know in Vegas you see a lot of this, in California you see a lot of this, even, you see a lot of this in different places out west, but the stucco.
Yes.
Stucco. Tell me about that.
So stucco can be, depending on what it is, and I can't remember exactly what EIFS stands for. It's Exterior Insulation Finishing System.
Okay.
When I was a home inspector, I did a lot of relocation inspections. And so more or less, in the town I was in, a lot of railroad employees. And what would happen is someone would get promoted and they'd usually move them down to Texas or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is the relo company purchases the home. Well, I'd have to go in and do the inspection so that the relo company's not buying a lemon. But if it had, I call it IFS, EIFS. Mm-hmm. If it had IF siding, we literally were required to drill a hole, like literally take a core sample to make sure it was installed properly.
Okay.
And the reason why is it was known when it first came out, and I think it probably came out in the 90s, probably early 90s. It wasn't being installed properly, and what they were using was some foam insulation, and then they would put a final coat of like stucco. They'd put chicken wire on it, and I don't know the exact process with stucco because I've never done it, but my point is they were installing it improperly, and it was causing a lot of mold issues. Not as much up north, but mainly like in Vegas.
Okay.
And so the EIFS siding was just known to be problematic. Now, what we have, like on our home, we have a stucco finish on it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just a thin layer of whatever type of cement they use.
Okay. So,
does that make sense?
Yeah. So really, it still comes down to what you said in terms of the most important aspect is how it was installed and whether it was installed properly.
Yep. Once again, the cost, like if you think about it, putting vinyl siding up or the James Hardy siding, it's pretty quick. You don't have to really, you need to know what you're doing, but you put your J channel up around the doors and windows and at the corners. It's pretty simple. But think of that compared to putting brick up.
Yeah, brick's very complicated.
Or stone.
Yep.
Rock.
Stone. Yeah.
It's very time consuming, and you have I think they call them hottie. It's a hot tender that literally some guys mix in the mud, and then you have the hottie that brings it to the bricklayer, the stonemason, and it's just so time consuming.
Yeah.
And, that's where it gets really complicated. But the best way you could really tell, like when I did home inspections, and I'll talk about just our house, it has stucco on it. If you were to go look at it, is there a bunch of cracks and defects? No.
No.
There's control joints, which are expansion joints. So I don't know how if they do.
There are lines in it.
Yeah, those are the joints.
Okay.
And that's for expansion.
Okay.
For freeze thaw.
Okay.
So for our listeners, freeze thaw. When I worked at the coal mine, I learned a lot about the freeze thaw effect, because in the spring and in the fall, on our high walls, what would happen, depending on the material, if there was a lot of clay in there, it would freeze at nighttime, and when something freezes, it expands. Well, and then in the morning, it would shrink. Well, if you think about what that's doing in a wall, does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're creating a void, and so then you have a high wall failure, and it's a total mess. But going back to what I was saying, like if you look at our stucco, how old is this house? 5 years? 4 years? I think it was built in 3 years.
3 years.
It's not that old.
I know.
But let's just say it was built 15 years ago. If we saw a bunch of cracking or discoloration, that would alert us to, hey, there's something wrong with it.
Absolutely. So coming full circle, because I want to reconnect this to toxic mold, what are the key things you want people to understand about their siding as it relates to preventing toxic mold?
So just like the roof, it's really important. If we're standing on the inside of this house while it was being framed, you frame the 2x4 walls up, or maybe 2x6 for the exterior. You stand the walls up. Well, then on the outside, the first thing you put is your OSB, which we talked about the roof OSB. 7/16 is normally what you use. That's for shear strength too. So once you put the OSB up there and you make sure it's all square, you would obviously attach everything, and that gives it shear strength. So for wind and stuff like that. After that, let's just say like where the hose spigot goes outside. You've got to make sure after the plumber puts the pipe out there that they seal around that pipe properly. Then you put house wrap on it, which is Tyvek. And then you start going to whatever you're going to do. If you're doing stucco, you're going to put that foam insulation board up, chicken wire, and the actual stucco. Usually for stucco, I'm sure they didn't do it on this house, but they usually put 2 or 3 coats.
Okay.
If you think back to when you're, in the really old days, or in Wyoming, you see it a lot, a full log house.
Yeah.
The logs are set. It's a full log. Then you put what's called chinking in between each log. So I guess my point is it just needs to be installed properly. But that OSB and then the house wrap, that is very important.
Okay.
But on a full log, you wouldn't do that.
Yeah, so it all depends, but the installation needs to be properly done.
Yeah, and we, when I was doing stuff for WCDA, which is Wyoming Community Development Association, a lot of those homes had, like that T99 siding or that masonite. And you sometimes would come on the job, but remember like below a bathroom window, how water damaged that was.
Correct.
And that could have been, and it normally was from a few things. It was the window leaking, so it's exterior moisture coming in. And then also moisture inside the tub, because it was usually in a tub.
Oh, yeah.
So that's really important, like the inside of it, what you're doing, and the outside.
So both looking at making sure there's proper insulation, but also making sure that there's nothing on the inside that's going wrong that's causing moisture to get trapped.
Yeah, and on the inside, I when we were up in Idaho doing a job, that home was built, I think, in the 70s. They had put a plastic sheeting vapor barrier up on the inside, and we now know, in 2025, that's not a good thing.
Correct.
Because it traps all that moisture in there.
Yep.
Whereas like Tyvek house wrap, it's designed to prevent moisture intrusion. So for coming in the outside. But if there's any moisture on the inside, it allows it to breathe.
Oh, that's good.
Does that make sense?
That does.
So I don't want to confuse our listeners with, you have to have proper ventilation behind your siding. But to an extent, you kind of do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Depending on what type of siding you're putting in.
Absolutely. So what's your call to action for people?
just do a quick walk around. I think we're getting close to doing the fall checklist, or have we already done it? I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
Anyhow, our listeners are probably like, oh, Steve, you should know this. But we either just did it or we have it coming up.
Mm-hmm.
But go outside and just take a walk around your house and look at your siding. Pay attention to below the windows and the areas that are close to the ground, and just make sure that everything looks good.
Awesome.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
So we don't talk about this very often or try to promote the podcast, but for all our listeners, obviously we appreciate you. But we're trying, our audience keeps growing with the podcast. I'm not sure what our numbers are. I haven't checked in a while, but they keep just going up and up. So for you listeners, thank you. But make sure you tell your family and friends that are, maybe sick from mold or having issues. Let them know about the Toxic Mold Podcast.
Absolutely. Share it.
Yeah, we've been doing... Well, we're in the 300s for the episode. So when did we start this? 2018? Anyhow, we appreciate all you listeners. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If mold in your home has you up at night, wondering if your house is making you sick, it is time for a plan. With a mold consult, in other words, the mold environment assessment and evaluation plan from CNC Contractor Services, you will get a 90-minute strategy call with Steve Worsley, who will review your home environment, answer your toughest questions, and create personalized mold recommendations and next steps just for you. Don't let mold concerns take over. Take control. Visit cnccontractorservices.com to schedule your mold consult today so you can breathe easier in your home tomorrow.